What's up? This is Sean McVeigh with Sean's Outdoor Adventures. It's the early morning. I'm watching my little munchkins here, and I'm going through some old video footage. And here is a little one from the archive I originally aired a couple years ago, and then restructured my channel and never put it back up. So here you have it.
And in this episode, I'm going to introduce the Hunting Guide Challenge. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But first, let me roll into some preseason scouting footage of me scouting for somebody else, which happens to be for my dad. It is September the 12th, and checked all my trail cameras. I've been trying to get a spot to take my dad this year. And all the spots where I had a trail camera set up that I was hoping to take him, there was nothing really good. Nothing exciting. Just a couple black bear, a few deer here and there. And so I got permission from a farmer. It actually butts up to public hunting ground. So I asked if I could just access the public land from the farm there. So right now I got me and my boy, and I'm gonna throw him in the backpack carrier, take him over to that place, and do some scouting. Check it out. I'm looking, like I said, for a spot for my dad. Let's go! So here we are, we're walking back to the spot. I hear gunshots over to the left here. Hopefully it's just somebody, I don't know, just messing around, not shooting at the animals. But pretty soon my boy's gonna be too big for this backpack carrier thing. Right there is someone's trail camera. I gave it the peace sign around the corner, so they'll get a picture of me, well, just my hand doing that. So if you have a trail camera and it's a Wild Game Innovation camo, and you get a picture of that, that means it's probably me. I'm being respectful, not messing with your camera. I just gave you the peace sign. It's in a good spot. Probably have some good pictures on there. I just want to interject real quick that it's really important to respect other people's property. I have friends who have had tree stands stolen, had trail cameras stolen, and let me ask you, do you want people stealing your equipment? So if that's the case, I just encourage you, don't do that to other people. If anything, when I come across a ground blind or a tree stand, I either leave it alone, or sometimes I'll even put my business card, my Sean's Outdoor Adventures business card there, just as a way of saying, hey, good spot. I was just walking by, I saw your setup, whatever. In this situation, I saw this trail camera, and I didn't mess with it. I just, gave it a picture of the peace sign, and it's just a way of saying, hey, I saw your camera, didn't mess with it, just went on my way. I encourage you to do the same. If anything, just leave the camera alone. It amazes me how he can fall asleep despite me banging and walking all around. It's amazing. He'll never take a nap when I want him to, or when he's like exhausted and it's nap time. But put him in the backpack carrier, walk around the woods, hopping over logs, and he's out like a light. Just found a good spot. There's a lot of fresh white oak. Fresh white oak on the ground. And I have seen a piece of plastic that broke off of somebody's equipment, so that definitely means other people hunt here, or it's public. So this is a good spot. I'm gonna take my dad here. We'll see how things progress. Well, unfortunately, after I finished that scouting mission, I realized it's just a bit too far. It took me over a half hour to hike back out to the car, and I realized that for my dad, it's farther than I want to be dragging him through the woods. And that's something I want to just mention here, and it's part of the rating system and everything in the Hunting Guide Challenge. Is some people are limited, by physical conditions, weight, sickness, any kind of disease or age, things like that. Now my dad's getting a little bit older, and I want to try to find a spot that's a little less strenuous to get to, that's still got decent hunting. So that's part of my challenge, and I'm going to talk more about that later. But anyway, as far as this spot goes, although I found some areas that look good for hunting, they're just not what I'm looking for in this situation for my dad. Okay, it is October the 3rd. Tomorrow is October 4th, opening day of Pennsylvania bow hunting season. My dad just got here, so we're gonna go get him set up actually
The place where I want to set him tomorrow, we can't really, I don't think, get a climber in. So we got the equipment here to put up a portable, and we got some hip waders because we got to cross this gigantic flowing river. Danger. This tree stand was actually very difficult for me to hang. Because of how fat the tree was, I had a very hard time moving my safety harness strap up as I was ascending the tree to hang the ladder. You may notice that I've only got this tree stand about 16 feet off the ground. Generally, I like to be up at around 20 feet, but this is something for you to consider. When you are guiding other people and you're setting them up, you have to take their preferences into consideration. Now, when I used to work as a professional guide out in Illinois, there was one hunter I had who was afraid to go above 12 feet. It is a little bit harder to be successful at that height, but it can be done. One thing is you have to get really lucky with the wind. So with that being said, you got to try to play the wind right. Well, you always have to play the wind, but with a stand that low to the ground, you need really good cover. For this particular stand with my dad, the tree was so fat and I faced the stand directly where the deer were coming, so we'd have the tree as a backdrop. He wouldn't be silhouetted at all because the tree's wider than he is. So keep that in mind when you're setting a stand. You need to have good cover for those low set stands. You also got to ask your hunter what his preference is for height. Some people want to be up high, but some people prefer to be lower. I simply based my setting of this stand off of where my dad was last year when he got his deer, and I came up on him in the woods and I saw him in his climbing stand. He was about 16 feet up in that height, in that hunt. So I just assumed, okay, well that must be his comfort zone. So that's why I set this stand. I probably should have asked him anyway.
That's a great spot, man. It's got all the perfect terrain. Rhododendrons down here, so it always stays green. This is the stuff that bucks love. This is ideal. That's good mixed match. Plenty of acorns. Yep, we're all set for tomorrow.
Here's another important thing to keep in mind when you're setting a stand for someone else. One is make sure that the footsteps are close enough together that they can comfortably make it to the next step. And another one is when you set that stand, it's important to have a strap not just around the top like most stands come with, but also one around the bottom, and that prevents the bottom from kicking out when you step on the stand. And in fact, for your own safety, if you don't have a strap for the bottom of your hang-on stands, bring a ratchet strap and ratchet strap the bottom of the stand real tightly to the tree so it can't budge at all. So that's one thing. Another thing is try to have the steps go higher than where the platform of the stand is so that the person can step down onto the stand. One last thing I'll mention is it's helpful if you have a handle of some type up around head height that the hunter can hold on to as he or she is stepping onto the stand. Now in this situation we're on public ground, and I don't like to screw steps into the tree anyway, so if I don't have any kind of strap that I can put around for a handle, I just instruct the hunter to basically hug the tree and step onto the stand, and it's not too hard to do if you know what you're doing. So this is it, opening day. The first morning has arrived. My dad got into his stand and I went up about 500 yards up the hill from him and got set up.
Alright, so it's 10:15 and I'm checking in with my dad on the walkie-talkie at 10:30. It's real foggy. I'll show you. I'll spin the camera around here in a second. It's real foggy out here in front of me. Perfect stalking conditions with the rain and the ground being all wet. So I'm going to still hunt my way down to him and you know, see if I see something along the way or maybe even bump something to him. But I'm kind of wet. It's held on raining longer than it was supposed to. Yeah, I'm going to slip out of here soon. I've been in the stand for 4.5 hours. That's a good effort.
As you can see, I had my dad set up in a spot that was pretty hot with some rubs and scrapes. But the wind was just blowing wrong for us that morning. It really ruined our spots, and I think the deer just knew we were there. So we packed up our things and headed out for lunch. My dad liked his location so much that he wanted to hunt it that evening as well. So he hunted his stand again, and I did not go back to mine. I felt mine was blown, and I had no intentions or plans of going back there for weeks. When you mess up a spot, sometimes it takes several weeks for the deer to readjust and get back to normal. So you got to stay away from those spots if you mess them up. So I went on the other side of the road up another ridge, and I got set up. And that evening, all I saw was a snake when I was getting set up. And then with about 45 minutes left of light, I just looked over, and there was a deer stepping into a thicket. I saw it for about a second and a half. I didn't have a chance to get the camera on. My dad didn't see anything. So his spot's blown. We yanked the stand out. Can't hunt on Sundays, so I take the stands and I run them over to a different place that I have not hunted before, but I believe is a decent spot, and I set up the stands. So Monday morning arrives, and I hunt with my dad I have about an hour and a half of daylight to hunt, and then I have to go because I have to watch our kids. And although this is a new area and I have a lot of confidence in it, the wind was blowing the opposite way that it was predicted, and it ruined the hunt. Since that spot's now blown, we get down a little bit early. I take down the stands and move them again. And I took him to another spot that I've never hunted, but I've scouted a few times, and I have a lot of confidence in this spot. I set up the stands right on the edge of a thicket where I know they like to bed, and I'm just hoping we get the right wind. We're supposed to, but we'll see what happens. Well, once again, the weatherman missed his forecast. The wind was blowing from the south. It was supposed to be blowing from the north, and it just ruined our hunt yet again. And this was it, the last morning that I had to hunt with my dad. So I was literally depressed and disappointed. One thing I wanted more than anything else was to really get my dad on a buck this year. And it kind of messed me up going on that show that's going to be on Discovery Channel, because all those weeks where I would have been making those final scouting preparations, I was away. I was out in California, so I couldn't do it. And so although it's frustrating, next year, man, I am already on it. I have already got new spots picked out for next year, and I'm going to monitor them throughout the summer next year. And that brings me to the specs for the Hunting Guide Challenge. So here's the criteria I set up, and you can apply it in your own life. If you're taking out a friend, you're their guide, you're their hunting guide. So use the tips for setting up a stand. If you're gonna set up a hang-on, use the tips that I gave you earlier in the video. And here's the rating system. Here's how you can create a score for yourself and see if you can beat it each time you go out, or however you want to handle it. But here's the rating system. First and foremost, it's a 2.5-day challenge, so it's specially designed for weekend warriors. Let's say you have a friend or family member come and visit you for the weekend and they can only hunt that weekend. Well, it's a 2.5-day challenge. If you're guiding someone, you have more time than that, like 5 or 7 days, that's fine too. But we're going to give extra points if somebody harvests or gets a shot at a deer those first couple days. The next thing I'll say is it's based on shot opportunities, not harvests. So if your hunter has an opportunity to shoot at a deer, you get points for that. And you know, even if he or she doesn't shoot or doesn't make a good kill, the shooting part's on them. So if they harvest or get a shot at a deer or have the opportunity but choose not to shoot on day 1, you get 20 points. On day 2, you get 10 points. On day 3, or that last half day, however it falls, you get 5 points. It's also important to put your hunter in a spot where he or she is going to have a close shot, so that they have a better chance of success. So we're going to give points for how close the deer is to the stand when he or she gets a shot. So if it's 20 yards or less, you get an additional 20 points. If it's between 20 and 30 yards, you get 10 points. Beyond 30, no points are added. Again, it's because we want to get those deer, we want our hunter to be close to get a good shot at the animal. So let me give the rating for the deer now. A shot at a doe will be 40 points. And again, because we're practicing quality deer management, we're going to pass on 1.5-year-old bucks, so they get 0 points. A 2.5-year-old buck, 50 points. 3.5-year-old buck, 65 points. 4.5-year-old buck, 85 points. 5.5-year-old buck, 110 points. 6.5-year-old buck, 140 points. And a 7.5-year-old plus would be 180 points. Again, we're basing this score on age, not on rack size, because rack size can vary from one area of the country to another. Now, if you're hunting someone on public land like I am, it's a lot more difficult. So we're going to give a 50-point bonus for doing this on public land. The last bit of scoring goes toward those who are elderly or physically handicapped or poor health. So if you have someone who can't walk far, especially on public land, if you can find them a spot less than, let's say, 400 or 500 yards from the parking area, you get another 50-point bonus, because it's really hard to do that, and sometimes people need that. They need to be close. They can't walk far. So that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you'll get out there and take on the Hunting Guide Challenge. Get a friend, a family member, somebody you know, maybe somebody who hasn't hunted yet or somebody who hasn't had much luck. Get them out there, help them get some success, and give yourself a rating. Until next time, take care and God bless.